It's Wednesday, April 29, and this is your Barbados Today Morning News Update. A quiet National Heroes Day was marred by tragedy after police and Coast Guard personnel had to engage in an intense operation to recover the body of Carlisle Brown of Kingsland Terrace, Christchurch, from a vehicle in the careenage. Police Public Relations Officer Acting Inspector Rodney Innes provided this update at the scene.
Our police operation control room received a telephone call from a male caller who reported that he had seen a vehicle semi-submerged in the careenage in the area here of Caverns Lane by the old screwed up. We naturally responded, mobile patrol responded along with the Marine unit. And on arrival, we confirmed what was reported. But by that time, the vehicle was completely submerged. That's what we saw. That's what our police officers saw at the time. A diver from the police Marine unit was dispatched, and he checked the vehicle and sadly discovered the body of an adult male was in the vehicle.
Investigations are continuing. The People's Party for Democracy and Development is raising concern about what it calls dangerous approaches to justice reform in Barbados. At a news conference on Tuesday, the party's spokesman on law and governance, Maria Phillips, took issue with last Friday's tabling of the Criminal Justice Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020, which, among other things, abolishes the requirement for a unanimous jury verdict for murder and the right of an accused to make an unsworn statement from the dock in an indictable case. The Bar Association has also knocked the move, saying there were no consultations, and Phillips claimed it was an attempt to sneak sweeping changes through the back door.
We are therefore drawing to the attention the real danger in this administration's approach to justice reform, which is being conducted in a rather piecemeal manner. At a time when we continue to battle constant delays, issues related to capacity, and the need for technological improvements in the functioning of our judicial system, it is still time for due diligence and inclusiveness in the change process. We would also reiterate that legislation is not, and it should not be used as a guise to circumvent the deeper prevailing issue to be addressed, which is reform of the justice system in Barbados. This can only happen through engagement of stakeholders in civil society, the Bar Association, and other institutions whose input will be integral to crafting solutions to the many issues plaguing the legal system in Barbados.
In other news, the number of COVID-19 cases in Barbados remain at 80. According to health authorities, none of the 32 employees of the National Assistance Board who tested for COVID-19 on Monday was positive. A total of 234 workers out of 255 have now been tested with 6 positive results. The Best de Santos Public Health Laboratory conducted 179 tests for COVID-19 on Monday, and all were negative. This brings the total number of tests conducted to 1,930. Overall, 6 people have died from COVID-19, 39 patients have recovered, and 35 people remain in isolation. Vaccine still saves lives. Director of the Pan American Health Organization, Dr. Carissa Etienne, has cautioned as she urges countries to ensure vaccination programs continue during the COVID-19 pandemic. At her weekly virtual news conference on Tuesday, she warned any move to slow down vaccines, particularly now, could result in preventable diseases re-emerging.
Until a vaccine for COVID-19 is available, immunizations can and must be delivered by the health services alongside the response to COVID-19. And this is why. First, we must vaccinate to protect health workers, the elderly, and vulnerable populations from other respiratory infections, such as influenza and pneumococcus, which can lead to more hospitalizations and may be harder to diagnose in the context of COVID-19. Second, if we fall behind on routine immunizations, particularly for children, we risk outbreaks, thus overwhelming hospitals and clinics with preventable diseases in addition to COVID-19.
Meanwhile, the Caribbean is getting high praise for its ongoing efforts to contain the spread of the coronavirus. PAHO's Director of Health Emergencies says the Caribbean's handling of the pandemic is a noteworthy example.
The Caribbean has been responding to this in a very cohesive way. And all the previous preparation and the coordination among countries is paying off. Not only in terms of deciding together which are the approaches, but also in terms of strengthening their capacity and sharing their resources in a scope of solidarity. And I think that is the main lesson that we have to learn. This pandemic represents an opportunity to show our solidarity with other countries.
A UWI expert suggests the novel coronavirus outbreak in the Caribbean has brought societal biases in the regional health system to the fore. That's the view of Chair of the Barbados National Drug Formulary Committee and Clinical Pharmacology Lecturer at the UWI, Dr. Kenneth Connell. Dr. Connell was among presenters at a virtual Vice-Chancellor's Forum entitled Race, Class and COVID-19, staged by the UWI on Monday.
There's a significant institutional bias, and I will challenge anyone who kind of postulates that there isn't, even in our Caribbean region. I started by saying the Caribbean likes to think of ourselves as one big, happy, multicultural and multiracial family. But let's take, for example, a country like Trinidad. You have a large Indian population, you have a large Black population, almost at 50-50, if my figures are correct. And we are uncomfortable speaking about this ethnic divide as it enters the health system. In other words, do we as doctors and practitioners, nurses, physiotherapists, do we treat the Indo-Trinidadian any different to the Black Trinidadian? Do we even want to know if we do so? And how are we measuring it? And if there is a difference in the way they are treated, different races, then what policies can we put in place to address it? I will use myself as an example here in Barbados, and I constantly have to check on myself in interacting with certain classes of patients to make sure that my implicit bias does not influence their care.
Dr. Connell says now is the time for governments to take action to reverse the trend.
I also think it's an opportunity for us to agitate an immediate call for action. When now the political landscape is looking all at COVID because they're worried, and rightfully so, about mortality and the disease burden and the economic burden in their countries, now is the time for us as academics and health professionals to agitate for a call to action and not just for more talk and more policies and implementing change. And how do we hold our governments accountable to this? For instance, at the post-COVID environment, one would hope that the Caribbean government will be able to clearly articulate how it plans to address discrimination in healthcare, whether it's class or race, because COVID would have unearthed this or magnified it.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To regional news now, Guyana's chief medical officer says a significant portion of patients who test positive for COVID-19 are asymptomatic. Tamika Rodney of HGP TV News has the details in this report.
While dry cough and sneezing, fever, and difficulty breathing are the most common symptoms associated with COVID-19, there are persons who may be infected with the disease, but because they are not showing any symptoms, are walking around and going about their regular lives whilst unknowingly spreading the disease. This process is known as viral shedding and is most prevalent in children and young adults. Dr. Shamdi Opasa, chief medical officer, during a recent interview with Nightly News, disclosed that a number of asymptomatic cases have been registered.
Well, we have identified positives from among contacts and they have not displayed any symptoms. So I would say, yes, we have recorded asymptomatic cases. We have, of course, a large group of numbers of persons who tested positive, became ill, and had to be attended to. But we do have persons who have gone through the entire period of the beyond 14 days without developing any symptoms, but they were tested positive.
On the international front, in Somalia, the challenge to contain COVID-19 is staggering. This week, authorities reported more than 480 positive cases out of 764 tests for COVID-19, but they warn the infection rate could be much higher. More from Al Jazeera News.
Mogadishu's Martini Hospital, which dates back to the Italian colonial era, is Somalia's only medical facility dedicated to treating its growing number of corona patients. Due to its limited capacity, the hospital only caters for the sickest of patients. This doctor runs the task force that is leading Somalia's response to the pandemic.
At least 218 patients of corona have come to Martini Hospital since the outbreak. 21 of those were admitted to the few beds available. 17 people are still here, while 3 patients died at the hospital.
It's hard to tell the severity and spread of the virus in Somalia. Until recently, the nation lacked the capability to test for the new virus, meaning samples were sent abroad and results delayed for more than a week. There is also limited capacity by the government to trace people the first victims of the virus came into contact with. The good news, however, is that 4 people have so far recovered from the virus. Bashir Adan is one of them.
I was provided good care by the doctors and the nurses from the day it was confirmed I had the virus. They also gave me good counseling when they broke the news to me, so I was mentally prepared for everything I went through.
All international and domestic flights, except for emergency medical and food cargo, have been suspended. The borders have also been closed as part of an all-out government effort to stop the spread of the disease.
That's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.